What's up, y'all? Today we're talking about why do women love musicians? Obviously, this is a music channel, but if you followed me for any amount of time, you know that we don't just do cover songs and original songs and put out albums here. I like to get into the philosophy behind being a musician and talk about what it's like to have a music career in general. One of the most misunderstood aspects of being a musician is this idea that you could just become a musician, learn an instrument for a couple of weeks, and then all of a sudden, the ladies will just come flocking towards you. There have been scientific studies on this that show that just by changing your profile picture to yourself holding a guitar, you're more likely to get a positive response from the ladies. So rather than do a bunch of cutesy, oh, I'm gonna run up to you randomly on the street and harass you with my music, I thought it would be more interesting to get into the mindset and the philosophy and some of the more nuanced issues concerning musicians and women. Here's the deal. Women like guys for very specific reasons, and if you don't have these qualities, it doesn't matter how many decades you've studied your instrument, it doesn't matter how many jazz licks you could play. The male musicians that end up successful in relationships already have a great personality. They already have some sort of moral foundation. They already have taken action in their life to better their circumstances and improve their status in the world. They're already good guys. They're already men that women would find attractive, regardless of their musical talent. If you actually go and research why women find musicians so attractive, it's because they think because they play an instrument, they possess these qualities. As if the musical ability somehow magically transforms them into a guy with a great personality, with a great moral foundation, and with a great sense of ambition. But in fact, this is not always true. Speaking for myself, I know lots of musicians out there who are actually pretty lazy, and the only real ambition they have is to get better at their instrument. And honestly, guys, the music business is not a meritocracy. So what are you doing spending 14, 15 hours a day practicing your instrument? You should be out there socializing, talking to women, playing them songs, figuring out how do I play music for them, about them, and that's what's going to get them more interested. So if you're a man out there and you're playing your instrument and you're wondering why the women are just not into what you're doing, maybe take a look elsewhere besides the amount of notes you can play per second. Take a look in the mirror and have a long conversation with yourself about who really are you? And if you don't know that, you're not going to be that good of a musician anyway. So what about the women out there? Does that mean that they just have impossibly high standards and they have no idea what they're doing and they're just so amazed by the sight of a guitar that they just drop to their knees? I don't think so. Because when you listen to a song, you're not just listening to notes. You're feeling the emotion of the song. You're putting yourself in that story. And so if you're in a situation where you've met a guy who's playing that song, all of a sudden, all of that same level of emotional attachment is going to come flooding back. And it's a completely unconscious thing that goes on in your brain. Now, just because there's an emotional response going on here doesn't mean that it's always positive. You can also have a very negative emotional association when somebody sings that R. Kelly song so flat that the contrast between how it's supposed to sound and how it sounds right here in the moment is so drastic that it completely can turn everybody off, not just the women. So I would argue that women don't just love all musicians indiscriminately. You actually have to be able to convey that emotion when you're performing the song. And naturally, the song has to actually be about her. You have to be singing it to her. Otherwise, there's just going to be this disconnect, like there's this barrier there, and you're never really going to make that connection through the music. But this also means that when women have these sort of emotional associations, they could also be much more likely to misjudge serious character flaws and serious personality flaws in a man. That dude didn't write that song. He didn't know any of the subtleties. He didn't go through any of the experiences that original artist actually went through. So just because he might put on a good act doesn't actually mean that he understands that depth of feeling in the song. So you can end up with a very talented musician that treats you terribly for many years. Women perceive higher status when they're pursuing musicians because they think, what if this guy gets famous? I don't want to miss out on that. I want to be a part of that. But at the end of the day, it's kind of a selfish endeavor, if you ask me. If you're interested in seeing more of this kind of content, I'm putting out a whole series on musicians and relationships. So definitely hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell if you want to be notified. Share this video with all the musicians you know, all the women you know, and hit that like button if you're feeling the threads. I'm putting this information out there because I think it's important that women don't just associate these negative behaviors with musicians by virtue of them being a musician. It's very likely that they're just bad people, and you just misjudge their character because he wooed you so well with his serenade. I would also argue that this obsession women have with dating musicians can be very destructive because it causes them to overlook serious issues in their relationships. And if they weren't distracted by all the beautiful music, they might have been out of there years ago. So I think that if all you women out there can learn how to value men for their values rather than their vocals, that's how you get the money.